So, you're flying to Japan soon. It's your first time and you're excited to explore Mount Fuji, to get your first glimpse of a geisha, and to taste a delicious, warm ramen bowl in Tokyo. As you prepare your suitcase, you have your passport in hand and you wonder, what do I need to know or be prepared for? Well, I've been a travel agent specializing in Japan for the past 10 years. And this is one of the most common questions I get from clients. In this video, I'll share 10 things you need to know and be prepared for before flying out to Japan. So make sure you watch until the end so you don't miss my top life-saving tips. The first and most important thing you need to know is that cash is still very widely used in Japan compared to credit cards. Although things are slowly starting to shift, credit cards are not widely accepted everywhere. Small restaurants, for example, usually only take cash. Ramen and other noodle restaurants have machines where you need to insert cash to place an order, much like a vending machine. If you don't have cash, you cannot order. It's simple. It's the same thing at a lot of bars, street food vendors, but also at souvenir shops. I've also stayed at Ryokans, traditional Japanese inns, that only accept cash. There will be places that accept cards, but it is usually department stores and bigger restaurant chains. So when you travel to Japan, you want to make sure to bring a lot of cash with you. So this brings me to my second point. Where do you get cash? Well, you have to be aware that Japanese ATMs don't accept international cards. The only ATMs in Japan where you'll be able to get cash are international banks such as Citibank, HSBC, etc., or 7-Eleven convenience stores, which is an American chain and so thus contain American ATMs. It can be time-consuming to find an international bank, so my recommendation would be to head over to 7-Eleven convenience stores, especially if your schedule in Japan is very packed. Which brings me to my third point. The exchange rate will be better outside of Japan. Before you ask, no, you cannot pay in US dollars or euros within Japan. Only Japanese yen are accepted. It's thus better to bring Japanese yen with you in your pocket. So, if you're preparing a trip to Japan, my recommendation is to exchange Japanese yen in the US or in your home country before flying out to Japan and bringing a substantial amount of cash with you. I usually recommend planning around $50 per person per day in cash during your trip. The second important thing to note is that when you travel to Japan, you should travel light. There is very little room in Shinkansen bullet trains for big suitcases, and there are luggage restrictions you must abide by, which you will see on the screen. If your luggage's total dimensions are bigger than 160 centimeters, you will need to place it in the oversized baggage area, which you will need to book in advance prior to boarding your train, and which comes with an extra fee. Space for luggage in general is also very limited to overhead compartments and small luggage compartments at the entrance of each car. I would recommend traveling with the smallest suitcase possible. If you struggle to travel light, there is also a luggage forward service which you can use called Taikubin. Safe and efficient, this service can be booked through your hotel reception in most hotels and ryokans in Japan. For a small fee, your hotel will take care of everything for you. You would only need to pack an overnight bag. When you arrive at your next hotel, your suitcase will be waiting for you at the reception. I highly recommend this service, which I always use whenever I travel to Japan to make for a more comfortable trip. Extra tip, you can also forward your suitcases to the airport if you don't want to carry it. Although you don't need a visa with an American or Canadian passport to enter Japan, I still highly recommend you fill in a Japan Web Declaration prior to boarding. This will fast-track your way through immigration. Put in place during the COVID pandemic, this website allows you to perform arrival procedures such as immigration and customs declaration online, replacing the paper arrival card. Although not mandatory, filling this in advance will save you tons of time on arrival in Japan. When traveling to Japan, you want to make sure you book everything you can in advance. Japan is seeing an unprecedented surge in tourism this year, leading to certain areas such as Tokyo and Kyoto to fill up extremely fast. This is true for hotels and restaurants, but also entrance to sites and museums. Ghibli Museum tickets, for example, generally sell out in a matter of minutes once they go on sale on every 10th of the month. Disney tickets, Universal tickets, Team Lab Planet tickets are also very popular this year, so if you want to visit these sites, you will want to book weeks ahead of your arrival. Train tickets in Japan go on sale 1 month in advance. If you don't book ahead, you can still board the train, but you may not have a seat, in which case you'll be required to stand for several hours, which may not be very comfortable. Train tickets can only be purchased on arrival in Japan and cannot be booked from abroad, so inquire with your travel agent to see if they can help you buy them in advance. Upon heading to Japan this year, you have to be aware of the new restrictions placed on tourists in Kyoto. The Japanese government recently put in place a measure restricting access to geisha district in Gion to tourists. Tourists are forbidden to access these districts under penalty of a fine unless they are accompanied by a licensed guide. Make sure to keep this in mind if you head over to Kyoto during your trip. I made a detailed video about this new measure, so if you'd like more info, I'll put the link to that video in the top right corner above. One crucial thing to understand: there is no tipping culture in Japan. Not only is there no tipping, but you risk offending a Japanese person if you offer them a tip. This is the case for guides, waiters in cafes or restaurants, taxi drivers, bellboys in hotels, etc. Please make sure not to tip. Although you find Wi-Fi at most hotels and cafes, I would highly recommend you consider purchasing a Japanese SIM card or renting a pocket Wi-Fi. Japanese streets don't have names and numbers the way you do in Europe or North America. Finding your way is thus extremely tricky if you don't have Google Maps. Although most street signs are both in Japanese and in English, without Google Maps, I'm telling you, you will get lost on your own. For this reason, I highly recommend purchasing access to the internet on at least one of your devices. There are plenty of companies online offering this service, so make sure to look it up prior to your departure. When you land in Japan, one of the first things you want to buy is a Suica card or a Passmo card, Ikoka in Osaka. There is no difference between these cards, so you can choose whichever you prefer. This card is a rechargeable card that you can use in the subway as well on buses all over Japan. This will save you considerable amount of time, as you will only need to tap in and tap out when riding the subway. Pricing in the subway, in trains, and in buses is calculated by distance. The further away you go, the more expensive it gets. Without a Suica card, you will need to purchase individual tickets and figure out exactly the price of each subway trip every time you ride it, which can be a bit of a headache. So, save yourself some time and some anguish and purchase a Suica, Passmo, or Ikoka card as soon as you land. If you plan to stay at a Ryokan and enjoy Japanese hot springs, also referred to as Onsen, there is an etiquette you need to abide by. Tattooed people, for example, are generally not allowed in onsens. Swimsuits are also not allowed either, as they pollute the natural hot spring water. For more info on Ryokan etiquette, please check my full-length video on the topic. I will put the link in the top right corner above. Finally, I wanted to address a concern I often hear from parents traveling with kids. Is Japan safe? Let me tell you this. Japan is the safest place I've ever been. You can walk back home in the middle of the night and nothing will happen to you. You can enjoy a stroll in the park at night and you'll be okay. One of my friends, when I lived in Japan, once forgot his cell phone in the subway. It was brought back to him the next day by the rail company. I cannot stress this enough. You can travel to Japan as a family with your eyes closed. That's how safe it is. This leads me to my final point. Don't stress so much about traveling to Japan. Yes, it is very different. Yes, the language is not the same. But if you follow these tips and leave well prepared, you can sit back and relax during your flight, knowing you will have a great time in the land of the rising sun. So I wish you a wonderful trip. And that's it for this video. I hope you found these 10 insider tips helpful. The best way to support me if you enjoyed this video is to make sure to like, share, and leave a comment in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe and to ring that notification bell to be notified of every time I post a new video. I hope you have a wonderful trip to Japan, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.